be able to have a policy for non-violent offenders. For me, for example, I saw some people, their charge sheet, you see them say one drink, this, that, and the person is in Kirikiri prison. He's in Kuje because you pick him for one drink. Somebody like that, what is he doing with hardened and convicted criminals in Kuje? So for non-violent offenders, I see no reason why they should be in custodial centers.
You know, possible to swallow, not to eat. Inmates don't eat, they swallow. I'm trying to make that distinction.
That are accused of collecting money and moving him from the medium prison to elsewhere, they are also here. So it's not only Bobrisky that is here. We can take you people today, take Correctional, take EFCC. If Bobrisky did not arrive at the end of this section, we will also take a decision on it.
Prison to say, I want to take responsibility for my own feeding.
Okay.
So you now nominate either your relative, your spouse, or whoever to be the one to be bringing food for you.
Pay for that privilege.
No, for the self-feeding, you don't have to pay. Okay. You just simply need to apply and then nominate someone to bring food for you. Because the food they are selling, giving to inmates, is ridiculous. So inmates now have to devise internal way of, you know, concocting whatever they are served to make it, you know, possible to swallow, not to eat. Inmates don't eat, they swallow. I'm trying to make that distinction. Because if you say they are eating, it's not food that they are served. And this is something I have said repeatedly. In fact, the correctional service in Nigeria is so bad. The day I arrived in Ikotegbene on the 27th of July, an inmate had died the previous day. The day I was leaving, an inmate had died. The day I arrived with you, an inmate had died. Like it was as if the death in the correctional service is so rampant. The healthcare is nothing to write home about. This is not limited to the correctional service that I was, the custodial centers. It's a national thing. What Fithayo is telling you is not a lie. When you see how inmates are sleeping, the point he did not make is that you have to pay for the space. And this space you are paying for is to allow you sleep properly. So there are inmates that, I'm telling you, there are inmates that have to stand. That I'm telling you that they may not even have the space, like to even squeeze themselves.
Oh my goodness.
It is so congested. It is so diabolical. The hygiene is zero. The water is nothing to write home about. The feeding. So I used to tell these NGOs that go to prison to donate food, you are wasting your time. If you want to go to these custodial centers to donate food items, donate on used clothes or whatever, be sure that you are there when those things are distributed to inmates.
Okay, because they never get to the purpose.
The correctional officers, many of them are also prisoners. The only distinction is the uniform. They are grossly underpaid. I don't know if you are aware. They are grossly underpaid. Their welfare is nothing to write home about. So they struggle with the food. In fact, when I was for the 1 month I was there, I had food in excess. I mean, people were bringing all sorts of things for me. It is not only prisoners who were struggling for the food, even the correctional officers. Yes. So the system has completely collapsed. And guess what? Part of the reason that awaiting trial inmates stay for so long to go to court is that before you are even sometimes taken to court, you have to facilitate it. If your relative don't come to give money, right, to in-charge court, they call it in-charge court, the officer in charge of taking people to court, you may not have a court appearance. Because there are people, let me also shock you. Do you know that there are inmates in Nigerian prisons today that nobody outside knows that they are there? Oh, I met a gentleman from Adamawa who was in Uyo prison. Nobody knew. Nobody outside the four walls of the prison knew that he was there. And it's not isolated. There are people in prison that cannot be accounted for. There are people in prison that their court records cannot be traced. There are people in prison that have not been awaiting trial, that have not been taken to court for up to 5 years. Oh my God. It is that terrible. The system has completely collapsed. So one of the things I did while I was living is that, by the grace of God, I was able to facilitate the release of about 17 inmates when I was living. Because some of them were released on bail, they cannot perfect their bail. So all I simply had to do was that to make money available and get them out on release. And those that needed fine and all that. So what I'm telling you is that it is let the minister stop this hypocritical investigation. What the National Assembly is doing, as far as I'm concerned, is a product of parliamentary redundancy. Having not been able to do the real work that Nigerians have voted them to do, they are now distracting themselves with the Bobrisky matter. The member who moved that motion, Patrick Umo, was my senior in the university. He's a lawyer. I know he's a thorough person. But what they should investigate It's not even just about Bobrisky. Bobrisky, for me, the whole investigation to a large extent is a distraction. The real issue is the rot in the system, is the way inmates are treated as animals. In fact, the day I arrived with you, 2 weeks after I got a grade, they took me to you. This assistant controller of corrections told me, I had to challenge. I said, Madam, do you treat people as animals here? He said, yes, we treat you as animals. You don't have any rights here.
She actually verbally told you that?
She said it to me. Of course, at that time, maybe, she had not known who she was speaking to. But she said it, this woman said it to me, here we treat you as animals. Inmates don't have any rights in the prisons. They have no rights. And it pains me because you will literally die. In fact, there was a gentleman who, in Ikotegbene, had an accident. His legs was seriously fractured. The medical facility there could not cater for him. I was the one who undertook responsibility for his treatment. And I did the same thing for several inmates. So I'm just telling you, it's not to sing my praise. I'm telling you how bad the situation is. There are inmates that, they have a call center in the prisons. There are inmates who cannot even afford to call their relative. So the system has completely collapsed. Anybody that tells you that we have this correctional service that is correcting inmates is wasting his time. That is why when people go there, in many occasions they come back, they are more emboldened. They go back to crime. There is nothing reformative about that system. The entire system is based on a mindset of slavery. It is based on a mindset of subversion. And guess what? Many of the people that are actually in prison are innocent.
This is the biometrics picture of capturing of Idris Okuneye Olarewaju on admission on the 13th of April 2024 at Medium Security Custodial Center in Lagos. During the time that he spent at Medium, because Idris spent 10 days at Medium facility in Lagos. 10 days. He spent 10 days, 12th to 22nd. Idris Okuneye Olarewaju, refusing to eat prisons or corrections ration, decided to apply for self-feeding. Self-feeding is approved in our laws. And this is a photocopy of the approval application for self-feeding where he nominated. I'll get the original for you. The original is also here. So the application for self-feeding was approved. It's not this one. And he Idris Okuneye, and nominated 2 persons that will bring in his food to the facility within the period he was there. The persons he nominated were Okuneye Abiola, and Moji Okuneye. Okuneye Abiola and Moji Okuneye. Then his health screening was done. During the admission, we discovered that Idris had a peculiar features that can not allow us to put him in a general apartment. No, I have to.
What are the peculiar features? Features, please.
Idris Okuneye Olarewaju though male, had some female features like a breast. He has a breast. Yes. This is the original of the medical examination done by the facility's medical practitioner, a qualified doctor, Dr. Ifeoma Opalopa. In this, the admission board had to enter into a meeting to discuss on the best practices and the best way to manage him. Then we arrived at the conclusion that we have to put him in a protective custody, which we did. And he spent his time at Medium, the 10 days, in our P ward room 2. P ward room 2 of the facility. And alone in that particular room. Why we did that is that because we have to abide by the international best practices and according to our laws. If you look at the Correction Act, Chapter 2A, 21A, you find out that we have to abide by the international human rights as approved by United Nations. And because of the United Nations Act, that's Chapter 21A of the Corrections Act, and also Chapter 13 of the Corrections Act, 1A, I to V. 1A, I to V. It's section, sorry. Section 13, 1A, I to V, where we have to look at certain features of an inmate before we use a particular management style. Corrections management is not done on social media. It's not done on the pages of the newspaper. It is a professional job done by well-trained officers for corrections management. And everybody, notwithstanding that our laws maybe have not actually recognized the issue of someone being a transgender, but we have to protect him. His rights are sacrosanct. His rights is important for us to protect. And that is why we don't have to, if we throw him into a general cell, before the next morning they bring out a dead body. Because there are a lot of people there who are convicted and are standing trial for rape and even sodomy. So we cannot allow that. If we had allowed that to happen, the same public that are clapping for VDM and Bobrisky today will begin to cast aspersions on the Nigerian Correctional Service for not managing Bobrisky well. The paper I was using for. Okay, let me use it. Just leave this one, since I can see it. Now, during the time that Bob spent at the Nigerian Correctional Facility, Medium Security Custodial, don't worry, Medium Security Custodial Center, Kirikiri, Lagos, Idris Okuneye Olanrewaju had a total of 39 visitors. 39 visitors. I have the record here. And the visit form that we have, we designed, that we use, the visit form has position for the name of the visitor, the visit date, the visitor's address, visitor's phone number, visitor's occupation, the name of the inmate that that is to receive the visit, a relationship with the visitor, and the inmate's consent. Before you see an inmate, the inmate will have to consent that he or she wants to see you. So after filling the form, on 13th April 2024, Idris Okuneye Olanrewaju had 6 visitors. Abiodun Okuneye, Kayode Okuneye, Adebolo Okuneye, Abiola Okuneye, Bukola Okuneye, and Mrs. Moji Okuneye. These are the 6 that visited on the 13th. On the 14th,
part of it is for us to be able to have a policy for non-violent offenders. For me, for example, I saw some people, their charge sheet, you see them say 1 drink, this, that, and the person is in Kirikiri prison. He's in Kuje because you pick him for 1 drink. Somebody like that, what is he doing with hardened and convicted criminals in Kuje? So for non-violent offenders, I see no reason why they should be in custodial centers. I think there should be non-custodial measures that we could. If we do that, there's a huge possibility that we will be able to reduce the number of inmates to like 15,000. And in line with global standard now, most correctional centers, I think for a country like Nigeria, because the jurisdiction of Federal High Court is nationwide, there's only one, so even if you're arrested or in Kano, you can be prosecuted in Sokoto or in Edo or anywhere because there is jurisdiction for federal offenses. So I think, my own opinion, that we don't need more than maximum 10 custodial centers of 3,000 capacity. There is one that is about 90% complete. That's the one in Kano. It's almost done. It's a 3,000 capacity. There is one we are doing now in Karachi. Here it's a 3,000 capacity. So for me, if we have 3,000 capacity, about 10, it means we have capacity for 30,000. So if what we have at the moment is roughly, say, 20,000 plus or minus, it means that we have made provision for increment of even at 50%. What that helps me to do is that at the moment I have 246 correctional centers. It's practically impossible to secure 246 correctional centers. What is the number of armed guard that we have for correctional centers? That we have to protect 246 centers. And it will interest you that some of these centers, 400 people, 200, some even less than that. So we, by being able to have these centers, means that we can now demarcate those centers to maximum and medium in those areas based on the gravity of the offenses and be able to create courts and facilities within that sector. So correctional centers that exist now that have not been caught up by urbanization, my own opinion is for the federal possibly to look at the possibility of transferring those structures to the states. So these states can renovate, the states can have their own there. Because if you tell them to go and build, a lot of states, we know, they might not. But there are some of these centers that we don't really need. 2, the chairman spoke about the correctional center in Sapel in Benin. One that interests me the most is even the one here, by our side, here in Kuje. The correctional center in Kuje shares a fence with a school. With a school. Yes, I mean? Yes. And the houses around. And you have people in those places and sharing fence with a school. So how on earth can we have that type of center in a 21st century environment? So I believe that those ones that have been eaten up by urbanization, yes, there can be other uses by the correctional service for those places. But for those other ones that are still in good locations in terms of international best practice, we can transfer those ones to states, so that states will now renovate, and also states will now take care of their offenders. Because let me say this clearly, in a year, how much do we feed our inmates with? How much of that is actually being expended on federal offenders? It will interest you, 70% of it is being spent on state offenders. So states, for me, so there's a lot of debate that we need to have on this. We need to be able to holistically sit down and be very practical. It's not an era of English-speaking venture. It's just about practicability, sitting down with you, critical stakeholders, to be able to rework it so that we are not asking the states to start afresh from sub-zero. We are saying possibly these 240-something, maybe it's about 50 that urbanization have eaten up. Okay, we take those ones off. The other ones, how do we get it to the states to renovate? And we have to come up with initiatives. So I think it's a wonderful idea that we need to play with.